Hi guys, and welcome to Rising Star here on the Vaughan George channel. If you're a regular subscriber to my channel, you know we have the Piano and Keyboard Artist series, and in that series we discuss the artists related to pianos, keyboards and synthesizers. We also have the Geek Talk series where we discuss the geeky and more sort of technical aspects of keyboards, pianos, synthesizers and music production. And I'm now unrolling this new show or series which I'm calling Rising Star. And what this is a show or a series which is dedicated to you, the independent artist. We're going to cover various different aspects. The reason it was necessary to start this Rising Star series was just because there are things that I want to discuss with you guys on the channel which are not necessarily within the topic or within the confines of Piano Keyboard Artists or Geek Talk. So it made sense to start another series within my channel which is sort of dedicated and focused on independent artists and the music industry. And today's first episode is all about music streaming. So let's jump right into it. Streaming is a very, very useful and convenient way of consuming music. It means you don't have to take a vinyl out of its sleeve and put it on a turntable, cue it up, or stick a cassette into a cassette deck, or put a CD into a tray. It's a very quick, on-demand type of way of consuming music, and that is just the way things are done these days. Everything's on the fly, on demand, which does really mean we don't tend to concentrate on things anymore, which is a completely separate subject. I guess what I'm saying is, guys, there are pros and cons to everything, and the digital domain has been a lifesaver for humanity. Digital is not only very sort of, should we say, eco-friendly, meaning if you stream a piece of music, it doesn't physically exist, meaning it doesn't exist on vinyl, it doesn't exist on tape or on CD, so to speak. Digital is really eco-friendly, if you understand what I mean. In terms of music production, digital is very economical. You do not need to spend thousands of pounds on a hardware synthesizer. You could just get a digital emulation of the synthesizer, and whereas some will argue they're not quite on the same level, there are those that argue that most people can't hear the difference. Once again, a completely separate subject. But on the subject of streaming, as I say, audio or digital, like many things, it's a double-edged sword. It has the pros, but it also has its share of problems. And we're going to address the problems that streaming, MP3s and digital have caused for us musicians and digital artists. And perhaps I shouldn't say problems, let's use the word challenges, shall we? Because it's a more positive way of looking at it. The topic of streaming and how musicians, producers and digital artists make their living is a very, very complex and big subject. Now, within this subject of streaming and audio and digital, we can veer off into many, many different avenues, but I want to keep it just focused on streaming and mainly what an artist gets for a stream and how they make a living or how they don't. To illustrate my point, I want to talk about Spotify. Now, there are loads of streaming services, Spotify, Amazon, 7 Digital, there are loads. But the reason I'm going to talk and focus on Spotify really is because Spotify is kind of the one that we all know about and a lot of people have access to. Now, before we delve into the subject, guys, I need to really just state my case for where I'm coming from and where I'm standing in this. Now, I don't want you to misunderstand me. I have got nothing against people making a lot of money, people being successful. So I'm from the school of thought, if I look at someone who's made a lot of money, I would look at them and go, oh wow, you've done well and good for you. I like to feel good for people. It's just my personality trait. And there are those who get angry when they see someone who's done well and they want to pull them down. And Just stay with me because there is relevance to this. The reason I'm saying this is because I'm looking at, let's look at the CEO of Spotify, shall we? A Swedish man called Daniel Ek, and he's now 36 years old, and he is worth $2.2 billion. Now, how Daniel Ek amassed that wealth, it's none of my business, it's none of your business. Obviously, I don't think he made all that money from Spotify. Obviously, to amass that kind of wealth, there was all kinds of other ventures that he was involved in, probably, and obviously good financial advice, investments and everything. So I doubt that Daniel Ek has made $2.2 billion from Spotify alone. However, he has turned it into a very, very profitable business. Now guys, the goal of this video is not to start a witch hunt. This is not for me to have a go at people who've done well and deservingly well, and to say, oh, you've done well, you owe us. That is not where I'm coming from. To get a bit philosophical, if you'll excuse me, and there is relevance to this, if we look at the world at the moment, there are a lot of protests and things going on and lots of rioting. And there are these schools of thought where people will protest and people will be like, oh, power to the people, let's pull down the rich and take some of their money. And it's a long subject, guys, but that mindset and that way of thinking it's not only contradictory to universal law, it's just stupid. It's a deep subject, but the most layman's way I can think to describe it to you would be to read the book Think and Grow Rich. It is written in plain, straightforward English, easy to understand. I believe it's been translated into many different languages. And he talks about how your reward in life, the money you make, is always directly proportionate to your value within the marketplace. Now, that's not your value as a human being, but your value within the marketplace. So in other words, what you make is in direct proportion to the value you bring to the market and the demand there is for what you bring to the market and how difficult it is to replace you. So when people get together in mass and they want to pull down the rich and give their money to the poor, it does not work. It's a bit like the saying, give a man a fish and he will eat for a day, but teach a man how to fish, he will eat for the rest of his life. Where am I going with this? I'm merely pointing out that someone like Daniel Ek, who's made billions from the streaming industry, I'm not saying he doesn't deserve it. It's just the way society and the social economic structures are set up that this is the way it goes. We cannot fart against thunder, if you know what I mean. However, another point I want to bring in, and I'm going to quote my dad. My dad is a very, very wise man, and he's got some of the best one-liners, and he can sum up a situation in a sentence in a very profound way. And I'm going to quote one of my dad's best sayings, and his saying is, I don't have a problem with wealth, but I do have a problem with obscene wealth when there are so many who have so little to get by with. What my dad goes on to say is, it's okay for you to be rich, to have your Lamborghinis, your Rolls Royces, your Bentleys, your jets, your yachts. That's all fine. But there comes a point where the wealth becomes obscene. You know, where you get people that have they'll have 14 Maseratis and they'll have a jet. You know, when the wealth just gets obscene. And then there are those that have just got so little. I hope I'm making sense here, guys. It's not saying people that have money need to give money to the poor. It's just that I just think things are a little bit out of balance. And to illustrate another point, I think if space aliens had to come from another planet and observe us, they would probably say, humans of the Earth, why do you value someone who kicks a football so much more than a nurse? Now, I'm not having a go at footballers, but if you came from another civilization, or from another planet, and you looked at how a footballer here in the UK, some of them, I don't know, some of them superstars, £200,000 a week. Whereas if you take a nurse who works for the NHS, which is our National Health Service, a lot of those nurses, you know, for a nurse to earn what a footballer makes in a week, she'd probably have to work 25 years. So here's the nurse who's saving lives and putting up with a lot of abuse, I might add. And then we've got another guy who kicks a ball and he gets paid £200,000 a week. But not to have a go at the footballers, it's the same with musicians, golfers, Formula One, in any vocation. You know, you've got the bottom, you've got the top. And if you wonder where I'm going with this, guys, is, and I haven't lost you yet, I'm not ranting against the machine. This is just the way our system is set up. One of my biggest pet hates, and I'm no social justice warrior, but I do hate injustice and I hate unfairness. That's something I've been against in school. I've just got an intolerance towards unfairness and injustice. Which brings me on to the subject of streaming. When platforms like Spotify have made billions, but the artists who create the product, remember, the artists create the product. Spotify and other streaming services are machines. They are machines. They need product. We, the artists, provide the product. So all I guess I'm saying is, guys, I'm asking the question, are we getting a good deal from streaming services? Now let's look at how much money we can make from streaming, shall we? So the article I'm reading you now is from the digitalmusicnews.com, and I'm going to leave a link in the description below so you can go through this. Now this is an article from 2016, so it's about 3 years old, but I think the information is still relevant 3 years later, now being the present date. Now let's look at how many streams do you need on streaming services to make $1. Now if you look at the chart, which I have coming up on the screen here, as I say, this is from 2016. Right at the top there, we have Microsoft Groove, which I've never heard of. So as you can see, per stream you're getting 0.03113113. I mean, that is a fraction of a fraction. And then you'll see you would need 32 streams to earn $1. But if we look at Spotify there, it's interesting because Spotify, God, look at that. You need 279 streams on Spotify to earn $1. I don't want to say that's criminal, but you know, it was hard enough when I remember when I first started streaming, when I first started selling my music. iTunes was one of the first ones, and let's talk in American cents and dollars, shall we? If you wanted to buy a song on iTunes, it would cost 99 cents. So effectively, 99 cents being $1, that means to make the equivalent amount on streaming, you would have to have on Spotify 279 streams in order to make $1. You know, the knock-on effect, I think it's also, people don't really understand, is as artists and producers and musicians, we the ones who create the music need you to buy the music so that we can effectively invest back into our studios and technology. For instance, in October, I'm going to a synthesizer festival here in the UK. And I know, as a lot of producers will be there, and you will be looking at the newer synthesizers, and you'll be thinking, wow, that's great. I would love that. I know how that could benefit my music. However, if my fans or the listening public are not paying me for my music, but just streaming it, that does not pay me. So I actually don't make enough money to be able to afford to buy the new synthesizers and technology, which means the people who make the synthesizers go out of business. So it's a little bit like the ecosystem. Once again, getting philosophical. The insect gets eaten by the frog gets eaten by the bird, dies, it goes into the ground, it decomposes, the circle of life. And up until sort of, let's say, the late 90s, when you could still make product, the traditional music industry model, when it was intact, it worked. But the downside to that was it only worked for a few. You know, the music industry and the record companies were gatekeepers. There were many people who had great ideas who could never get discovered because they couldn't, because you could only release your music through you'd need money to release a record, and in order to release a record you would need to get an advance from a record company. In order to do that, a record company would need to sign you. So the beauty about today is you can just get yourself set up for quite affordably, as I'm going to show you guys in my Geek Talk series, and you can have a go yourself, and you can actually create your own fan base, and you can sell directly to your fans, and you don't actually need a record company or some kind of gatekeeper to stop you from doing that. So there is a real upside to technology and where we are in the world with this all. Coming back to the streaming model, I know a while ago, I think Radiohead, and there've been quite a few, Taylor Swift as well, pulled her music off Spotify or refused to go onto it. And there have been quite a few high-profile artists. For the rest of us, I think we're just, you know, a lot of the artists that I talk to, the producers and the artists that I coach, they're so desperate to do their music and to get it out, they will try everything. They put it on YouTube, they put it on every streaming service, and, you know, these platforms are available, so you're just trying to get the recognition, so it makes sense to put it everywhere. But the fundamental question, guys, that I'm asking in this video is, if we take the Spotify model, 279 streams to earn $1. I can tell you what, I've been releasing music personally for many years, and probably not as much as I wanted to. And yes, some of the earlier stuff I released did suck, I admit. Now, I'm not a well-known artist, but I've had thousands and thousands and thousands of streams over the last 10, 12 years. And all I can say to you is, if every person that streamed those albums actually bought it, I'd be pretty well off. In fact, if we take all the streams I've had over the last 10 years, if only 10% of those were sales, I'd still be pretty well off. So guys, I'm not raging against the machine. I'm just asking the question, where do we go from here? Looking back at this chart, you can see there's Tidal in the middle there, 185 streams to make $1. It's interesting that Spotify is sort of at the bottom of the list here. And I'm not having a go at Spotify, but yeah, but shame on you, Spotify. And coming back to that slightly philosophical little speech I had in the beginning of the video here, I'm not ranting and saying, "Oh, we want more money for independent artists." That's not exactly what I'm saying. I'm just saying is, guys, do you think this is fair? Because I don't think this is fair. I think the system is, I don't want to say it's broken, but it's kind of damaged. And I just, as I say, I'm not ranting. I'm just echoing on what a lot of fellow musicians and artists, and indeed the people that I coach, it's one of the first things when I ask them what's the biggest problem that you face. And a lot of them will say, I can't sell my music. Of course, then I have to, sometimes you've got to have the hard conversation with people and say, I don't think your music is quite up to scratch yet. However, that's just my opinion. And at the end of the day, if someone makes music, and who's to judge how good it is? There will always be someone out there who will like it. So that's a completely different subject once again. So as you can see, guys, this subject is potentially a can of worms that I've opened. And it's a general discussion, and I just wanted to scratch the surface. And I just wanted to ask you what you guys feel about streaming. You know, how do you consume your music? And I guess the questions are, if you're an independent artist, how has streaming affected your workflow? What do you think of streaming? Do you like it? Do you agree with what I've said? How do you think we can solve this dilemma? Because this is a dilemma within the music industry. People can't make a living from it, and it's very sad to see. There are some people who are so talented, but because they just can't make a living from it, they have to stop doing it, and it's very sad, guys. It's very, very sad. So the question, if you're a producer or an artist, tell me your struggles. Tell me, what do you think the solution is? What do you think the next step is? Where do we go? What's the next step? If you're not a musician or a producer, if you're just a consumer of music, how do you consume your music? Do you stream it? Do you buy your music? Do you buy vinyl? Do you buy a CD? Do you believe that music should be free? There are no wrong answers here, guys. I think this is going to be a very, very interesting topic of discussion. So from the comments that you leave below, I will then be able to decide what the next subject is from this, that we can go into a lot more detail. But guys, if this is your first time to my channel, I'd like to welcome you. If I haven't scared you off, please click the subscribe button and join us. It's a lot of fun. Also, guys, I must remind you about the Vaughan George Facebook group. I will place links to that below. just click onto it. It's on Facebook, and just request to join. It's a fantastic group. We're having so much fun and interaction there. So that's it, guys. Let me know what you think about streaming. How are we going to solve this problem? I look forward to seeing you in the next video. Thank you so much. See you soon.